How's it hanging, everyone? My name is Reed, and welcome to Storytime. Today we are going to be reading some Malicious Compliance, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Oh, and one more thing. I'm currently on a business trip and in a hotel, so my audio quality is going to sound noticeably worse. I'll be working on finding a good setup so it doesn't sound as crappy as it does now, but for today, you just gotta deal with it. If it's on the planogram, put it up. I spent several years working at a big box retail store in a small Midwestern town in their cellular phones department. On slow days in the afternoon before the main rush, I would help set up fixtures and displays throughout the sales floor. A lot of the store planograms or diagrams to set up product are computer generated based on previous year's sales figures and foot traffic. For instance, say your store sold a lot of sunscreen, sunflower seeds, and condoms during the annual state softball tournament, another story for another subreddit. The computer would create a planogram for an end cap or display to show such items, hoping to generate more sales. The computer would come up with wild combinations that apparently worked so well that when we brought up the bizarre nature of some of the planograms to our leadership, they just shrug and say, "If it's on the planogram, put it up." You see where I'm going with this? Now, let's set the stage. Our store neighbors, a large fairground that houses one of the largest annual powwows in the world where tens of thousands of folks from around the world come to participate. This powwow has some truly amazing shows and events from surrounding local and regional indigenous tribes, but like any other major event, there are some bad apples. One of the go-to highs in the area is huffing cans of compressed air, and our store routinely sold out during this time, and we sometimes got yelled at for having none on the shelves and would have to call other stores to see if they had any. Unfortunately, huffing, drug use, and public drunkenness became synonymous with the powwow by the non-indigenous locals rather than a great cultural exchange. The dancing ceremonies in particular are quite impressive, beautiful, and clearly take a lot of time and effort to put together. So, the last year I worked at this store, it was the week of the powwow, and I got asked to help set up a computer-generated stack base, floor pallet loaded with product. The stack base consisted of disposable cameras, micro cassette tapes, and I crap you not, cans of compressed air. Apparently those were our largest sellers the year before. Edit. This was about 10 to 13 years ago when camera phones were not as widely available, so I guess people used recorders to record the music on microcassettes. Not wanting to be accused of racist corporate-sponsored high pushing, I showed the planogram to my direct manager, codenamed Papa Bear, and suggested we swap out the cans of compressed air for obvious reasons. Papa Bear, not wanting to be bothered playing Chips Challenge and Ski Free on the old manager's computer in his office, sighed in annoyance and gave me the same old line. "If it's in the planogram, put it out. The computer knows best, so get it done." Papa Bear was not my favorite boss at all. His leadership style consisted of waddling out of his office, barking orders, then waddling back like a penguin. For instance, Papa Bear loved getting on our cases for not parking in the wee back lot where employees should park, even when it's icy out, but has no problem parking his sports car in the front because leadership earned those spots. In short, he earned the malicious compliance he was about to get, especially since he knew what was on the planogram and heard my specific concerns about how it would be perceived. Not wanting to lose my job and seeing a chance for malicious compliance, I smiled, said, "You got it, boss," and went out to ensure his orders were followed. I was working with a coworker who we'll name Oscar, and he witnessed the exchange I had with Papa Bear, whom Oscar didn't like either. Oscar and I assembled the stack base with the cans of compressed air, bulk packs no less for longer enjoyment, in the back stockroom, as our plan was to run it to the floor on a pallet jack, drop it off, and run. We didn't want any of our customers thinking we'd assembled this. Scores of stock workers came by, saw what we were putting together, some of them members of the local tribe, and expressed their shock at the level of bad taste. We showed them the planogram, explained very clearly that Papa Bear signed off on it, even though we brought our concerns to him, and continued working. Once we completed the stack base, we conducted a quick bump test to ensure that it would survive the hasty deployment. Safety first, wheeled it to its designated spot near the front registers, and got the heck out of Dodge. It was clearly meant for impulse buying, and the cherry on top was the signage for the pricing sign, which usually had a blurb that said something seasonally along with the lines of Merry Christmas or Enjoy Spring. This one said something along the lines of Enjoy Summer Events Properly. 15 minutes later, I heard a loud surprise, WTF, from the front of the store. I could hear it clearly from my station on the other side of the building. Oscar and I looked at each other knowing full well what was going down. On our department walkie, we heard, "Management to front end for customer courtesy, please," and saw Papa Bear making his way out of the back since he was the only manager on duty, looking fully annoyed and probably completely unaware of the storm he was about to walk into. We could hear the shouting from the rightfully so ticked off client. Papa Bear was accused of just about everything from racism to being a corporate shill. I don't think we heard him get a single word in. We wanted to feel bad for the customer and the first employee who responded, but knowing Papa Bear was being dished much needed punishment for not listening to his subordinates when they brought up a genuine concern was very satisfying, almost glorious. Within a minute, we saw a backroom employee take a pallet jack on the floor and wheel the stack base of shame back to the stockroom to be fixed. An hour later, a co-manager, Papa Bear's right hand and an okay boss, came out and asked what happened as it was our names that assembled the stack base. We explained we went to Papa Bear with our concerns and he told us to assemble it anyway, so we did as we were told. The co-manager nodded in agreement as he had heard the same from others who saw us assembling the stack base and expressed their concerns. Apparently, the customer filed a complaint with corporate, and so leadership was checking the cameras and everything to get a timeline of the events. The co-manager told us we did exactly as we should have by informing management of our concerns and doing our jobs when told to, and then walked back. That was the last Oscar and I heard of the incident, other than a new policy that computer-generated planograms had to be vetted by management first. Papa Bear kept his job, but my stories of him do not end there. Let me know if you want to hear more. Oh, come on, OP. You know we want to hear more about Papa Bear. Come on and bring it. They paid for my Christmas presents. A few years ago, I worked for an internet service provider, and while I worked in the technical support department, my job was strictly administration at the time. I worked the same hours as the day shift technicians and had to stay for the department overtime when required because I was part of the team, even when I had to just sit around because I had no tickets to work. The job paid well, and the people I worked with were awesome, so I did not mind all that much. That year, in October, they announced they would be doing a competition among the department to bring up the dismal morale. It was explained they had extra money in the budget for our department, so they were giving us a chance to earn some of it. Several tasks were outlined. In completing one of them, the employee would get paid a $50 gift card. This seemed like a lot for a gift card, but our new VP figured this would get more participation. Looking at the goals, I realized quickly that I, who was part of the team, had no tasks for my group that would qualify for a gift card. I brought this to the attention of my manager, we'll call her Rhonda. Rhonda was not a big fan of mine and told me that the competition was for the technicians and she was sure I could figure something out if I wanted to participate. Okay. Looking at the list, I noticed that one of the tasks was to fill in the email field on trouble tickets if it was not populated. This is generally something that is ignored by the technicians, and the company had been trying to get people to use it. Thus began my petty revenge / malicious compliance. I began to comb through the open tickets and fill in email addresses for customers wherever I could. October, I started late and only made about $400 in gift cards. The next month, I made $850. I was getting annoyed looks from the manager in charge because I was making more than any other technician. In December, due to a storm, we had a huge outage and hundreds of customers were affected. I earned $1,400 in gift cards. In January, they canceled the competition. I wonder why. I found out later that any gift card over $20 gets reported and taxed. So yeah, my taxes were a bit higher that year, but it was worth the look I got when the manager handed me a stack of $50 gift cards, and I sat in front of her counting each one to make sure she did not short me. It was a great Christmas that year. I'm surprised it took them until January to cancel that competition. OP was raking in that dough. The night shift supervisor has a date with malicious compliance. Many years ago, I worked as a maintenance technician on an automated assembly line. It was my job to perform quality audits throughout the section of the line where I worked. If something didn't pass inspection, then I would put the product on hold and test additional samples. Whenever further tests failed, I would stop production, notify the lead or supervisor, and then troubleshoot and repair the machine in question. For a few years, I worked the night shift. The night shift supervisor, who I will call TD Gray, had a habit of vanishing for most of the night. He would be around at the start of the shift, we worked 12-hour shifts, and then he would show up after the morning meeting and maybe doodle about the office until the end of the shift. As I was doing my audits one night, I found a machine that was drifting out of spec. I shut it down and paged Mr. Gray, but he didn't respond. I found the issue causing the quality failure and got the parts required for the repair. The repair took about an hour, followed by testing of 100% of the products for a few minutes. Meanwhile, TD Gray returned from the morning meeting. He was angry and walked straight up to me and asked who authorized me to shut down his machine. I tried to explain that it had failed an audit and that I was just following procedure. TD wasn't interested in anything I had to say. Apparently, during the morning meeting, he reported that our area was running with no issues. An engineer who would walk our area each morning contradicted him and said that the technician had one of the machines down for an hour and was just now releasing it to production. TD gave me a written warning and told me that I do not have the authority to stop production without his approval. A month or so later, a similar situation arose and I tried paging Mr. Gray, who didn't respond. I should mention that this was well before cell phones, and no, we didn't carry pagers. To page someone, you had to call the reception desk and they would page them over the PA system. Since there wasn't a receptionist at night, this function was handled by a security guard. I told security to page Mr. Gray every 5 minutes until he responded. They wanted to do it every 30 minutes, but I insisted on nothing less than every 10 minutes, and I also wanted to log each page. This was normal procedure, but they often would just record one entry in the log regardless of how many times they repeat the page. When the engineer came in, he looked at my audit sheet and asked me why I hadn't stopped production. I explained that I had been told I couldn't without Mr. Gray's approval. I also told him that security had been paging him every 10 minutes since I found the issue. The engineer stopped production and told me to begin repairs. He then got a copy of the log from security and went to the morning meeting. When TD Gray reported that all machines were running with no issues, the engineer spoke up and asked why security had been paging him every 10 minutes for over 3 hours. I never did find out where Mr. Gray went every night or what he did, but he soon had more time to do whatever it was. Who goes to a meeting to report on stuff and doesn't fact check first? I mean, talk to your people, figure out what you're gonna say, or you're gonna end up looking stupid like this. Just because you're crippled doesn't give you license to be an expletive. I worked as a security guard for a little while at a state-managed facility in my hometown. There was always some event or contest or attraction, and often it involved animals. I don't know if any of you know people who show dogs, but this particular instance occurred during a dog show. There are 2 types of people who compete in these shows. They are either genuinely kind and funny, or they are the most stuck-up pieces of crap you could find. Anyway, I was to guard a space between 2 buildings to keep any and all motor vehicles from coming through because it was a high foot traffic area with tons of animals walking around, and there was no way out that way anyway. A couple of days of the event goes by, and I'm turning people around left and right. But there is an older lady on one of those big motorized wheelchairs. She came and went, and I thought nothing of it until I see her come around the corner with her arm all twisted around, dragging a sack of large boxes, struggling to steer while keeping the boxes from falling. As she crosses my gate, I step up and ask if she would like some help. Without slowing or even looking at me, she says, "Get the freak out of my way," and rides by. Okay, no motor vehicles. She comes riding up sometime later and I close the gate and I tell her the rules. She predictably loses her mind, but I tell her the rules are the rules. I don't make them, I just enforce them. Honestly, I wish I was there just to see this lady zooming around with all those boxes. Spicy Skittles. Now, I live in the UK and we have sweets named Skittles, rainbow-colored sweets that apparently take after a fruit, touch the rainbow, taste the rainbow, and I love them, my favorite being the sour ones. Sometimes, like all sweet brands, they make limited edition versions, one being spicy flavors that when you eat them, as well as getting normal flavors, they have a nice spice to them that comes out of nowhere. Me, not generally being a huge fan of spice, love them. Now, I was with a friend at a bus stop waiting for a bus so we could go into town and play Pokemon Go, sue me, when I see this mother, hereby called Karen, and her bratty kid. The kid walks up to me. Bratty kid, "Are those Skittles?" Me, "Yes, however, they aren't the ones you're used to." Bratty kid, "Can I have some?" Me, "No, sorry, they are spicy and I don't think you'll like them." Bratty kid, "So?" Me, "You won't like them." Bratty kid walks over to his mom and she walks over. Karen, "Excuse me, why can't my baby have your sweets?" Me, "Because they are mine and are spicy. He won't like them." Karen, scoffing, "Rubbish, sweets can't be spicy. They are called sweets. Them being spicy is just stupid." I show her the bag that says Sweet Heat. Karen, "I don't care. Give him some." Now I see my bus approaching and I think of a genius plan. I turn to my friend and grin. Me, "Sure, you can have some." I grab him a handful and he takes it as my bus arrives. We pay for our ticket and the kid puts all of them into his mouth at once. A bad idea. I can only smile in glee as every Skittle, a lot of them, is chewed and the spice is released. I'll never forget his face as the bus drove away. Yeah, I don't think any random kid is entitled to my sweets, and I can't believe the mother doesn't know that either. Alright, that's all we have for today. I hope you really enjoyed the stories, and thank you so much for listening. If you want to see more content like this daily, don't forget to subscribe. Alright, have a nice rest of your day.